Okay, so welcome everybody. For those who don't know me, my name's Jazmin Cole. I'm a trainee solicitor in the London office, and I'm going to be the host for this panel. The panel is being recorded and we'll circulate the link for viewing later for those who are unable to attend, and if anyone wants to watch the discussion again. So we have a great panel lined up this afternoon. We have Tamina Greaves, who is a senior Crown Prosecutor at the CPS. She specialises in the prosecution of rape and serious sexual offences and is also a visiting lecturer at the University of Law. She's also the co-chair of the Birmingham Black Lawyers Network. Tamina, would you like to explain a bit more about the Birmingham Black Lawyers Network?
Yes, absolutely. So Birmingham Black Lawyers, aka BBL, essentially we are a social networking organisation, and our key objective is to promote diversity within the legal profession. So when the organisation was set up, we recognised that the representation of Black lawyers in particular was woeful, and we felt that we needed to do something as a collective of Black lawyers to change that position. Now, we've made some strides since 2011, when the organisation was started, but we recognise there is still a long way to go. So in terms of how we advance our aims, what we do is we do a number of things really. So we will have networking events, networking opportunities, predominantly for aspiring lawyers. So you'll find there'll be students who are doing their degree or doing the LPC or BTPC. And we find that have the opportunity to network with real life lawyers and exposing them to real lawyers and giving them the opportunity to speak to people is invaluable. You find that a lot of particularly Black aspiring lawyers come from backgrounds where they've never really had direct contact with lawyers, and whilst they know they want to be a lawyer, they don't necessarily know how to navigate, the complex world of qualifying. So by giving them those networking opportunities, they then get to speak to lawyers. They can advise them on what direction they want to take their career, and often can secure mentorship and work experience. We also
Sorry, carry on.
That's fine. No, we also do a number of skills events, CV workshops, etc., just to build upon those skills and also to develop certain soft skills that they might be lacking. We partner with a number of organisations and firms to give specifically Black students the opportunity to have work experience or attend insight afternoons or attendance centre workshops, specifically geared at them, because we realise that firms recognise that there is a lack of diversity within their organisation, so they will put on targeted events in conjunction with us, and we give those opportunities out to the students. And lastly, we put on a number of social events, not just for students but for established lawyers, partners, junior lawyers, so that they get to have that peer-to-peer contact, because often you can find that a Black lawyer will be often the only one, or maybe one or two Black lawyers within an organisation, and it can be quite an isolating experience. So to give them that opportunity to socialise with lawyers who look like them and perhaps can relate to them more, we find that's really beneficial, and our events tend to be well attended and usually sold out. And at the end of the year, or not the end of the year, but the big highlight of BBL is that we have a ball, a big massive ball. This next year will be our 10th anniversary ball, and we will have prominent figures within the legal community who attend, and essentially it will be an opportunity for people to just let their hair down and just celebrate Black excellence within the legal profession. So that's us in a nutshell.
That's great, and I know Freeths we work with the Birmingham Black Lawyers network quite closely, and I can vouch for those events. They are quite good. I've been to a couple in the past. So to introduce the rest of the panel, we have different levels and different backgrounds as part of the panel joining us. The important thing is we are a law firm. However, there are many staff members who do not practice law but contribute to the success of the firm. And it is important when we have these type of conversations that they are also heard. So I'd like to also introduce Treshawna Beckett, who is the Business Development Assistant working out of our Nottingham office. On top of being a Black woman, she also brings her perspective from the business development team. We also welcome Philippa Dempster, who is the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And, you know, since the events over the summer and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, Philippa has been challenging the firm to become more inclusive and more diverse. And we are in close correspondence with Philippa and the Black Lawyers Network to ensure that the firm are talking about these topics in a more fluid way and in a more productive way. We also have Mukesh Patel joining us from the Leicester office. With these type of conversations, it's also important to ensure that we have all different types of voices. And although it is Black History Month, it doesn't take away from the fact that we want to celebrate diversity and create a platform for other people from other minority backgrounds to share their views. Lastly, we have Lisa Gilligan, also from the Leicester office, and it'll be interesting to hear from her as an experience as a lawyer in the firm, but her experience from the firm over the last 15 years. So we're going to jump straight into the questions, and we are also encouraging people to submit their answers through the Q&A function in the call, and we'll raise them as and when we receive them. So first question is, we're constantly told in the UK that the UK does not have a race problem. But in light of the Black Lives Matter movement and the death of George Floyd, more people are beginning to realise that there is some inaccuracy behind this statement. My question to the panel is, how have your views on racism in this country changed in response to the recent events? Philippa, why don't you kick us off?
Hey, thanks, Jazmin. Well, I think my views have changed quite a lot. And in some respects, I was surprised by that, because I was in that camp that felt that there wasn't very much racism in the UK at all. But I think the events that you've just mentioned, and also other wider stories in the press. I mean, today there was a group of Somalian women that have been beaten up in London back at Christmas time, where they're complaining that that was a racist attack and it hadn't been properly investigated. All those sorts of things sort of chime with what you're talking about and what we're all talking about here. And for me, having become more aware of these topics and being part now of the Diversity Committee, having spent time talking to Black colleagues in particular throughout this, then I actually have a much better understanding now of how people can be treated and are treated, and you just don't realise that's what's happening. You know, some people were telling me about conversations in a car firm warehouse where they were ridiculed because they were coloured, yet white people were being treated differently. And you just think, how can that happen in this country? And it's very surprising, and I think it means that we have to do a lot more, and conversations like today really help to make people realise it and stand back from it. So to me, my reaction to all of this has really changed quite significantly, and we need to do a lot more about it.
Tamina, what are your views?
I mean, for me, it hasn't changed, because obviously I'm a Black woman, and this is the life that I live, and I've always known and been aware that racism exists in this country. I think for me, because I'm so socially conscious about it, and I recognise that not everybody is, because if it's not your lived experience, it's quite easy to either not know or be indifferent to it. But for me, because of course I have heard and I hear about, you know, incidents of police brutality or racist incidents all the time, to the point where it becomes quite tiring. My first instinct when the incident with George Floyd happened and it became mainstream, particularly in the UK, was, where have people been? Why is this news to you now? That was me from my perspective, because it's always been in my consciousness, and for me, I see it and I live it, and it's there every day. But then obviously I had to sort of regress and then recognise that, you know, not everybody knows and not everybody recognises, you know, that this is the lived experience of Black people. And it doesn't matter whether you're a professional or whether you're a criminal, you know, often you find as a Black person that you were all sort of lumped into one group, and there is a perception of us which is often negative, often portrayed by the media. You know, and in some respects, you can understand why a lot of people didn't really recognise that racism was a real big issue in the United Kingdom. But another thing that I realised that how my views did change slightly, in that I actually recognised that there were more people in this country who genuinely were not prepared to accept that racism was an issue, even in light of the things that have happened. And I mean, I haven't been on Twitter for very long. I was forced to join Twitter, but you know, when I joined Twitter, and I would see certain tweets by, you know, certain Black politicians, and you'll see the comments, and you'll see all these openly racist comments, and I thought to myself, wow, there are like that many people, you know, in the United Kingdom who have these racist views. So I feel like what's happened has actually brought a lot of negative views towards racism to the forefront, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's refreshing that some people are finally recognizing that what we've been talking about for years, we're not just exaggerating, you know, this is real. And this does happen. It's not just a US problem, it's a UK problem as well, you know, and it's ingrained and it's systemic.
Okay, no, I agree. I actually, without taking time away from other people, I attended a Linklaters panel last week, and the panelist was reiterating the same thing you were saying. He was saying he's lived in America for quite some time, he's lived in the UK for quite some time, and the one thing he observed in the US was they are aware that they have a race problem, but they don't think they have a class problem, but their class issues are very much well alive. Whereas in the UK, he said it was the opposite way around. He said in the UK, we understand that there are classes, and you know, this is something that's not a controversial statement, but the moment someone raises the word race or racism, it's controversial, and people are denying it, that it's existing in the UK. So that is an interesting point. Treshawna, do you have anything else to add?
I totally agree with Tamina. For me, racism has always existed in the UK since I've been here, actually, and I came here when I was 9. I'm 29 now. I've seen it, I've experienced it. I suppose the only thing that's changed for me slightly is, like Tamina says, people are becoming more confident to be openly racism, whereas many years ago they wouldn't have even tried to say something like that. But now with social media, you can say what you want, and then other people jump on that bandwagon as well. But I will say that one of the things that I have observed, and I do really like, is that everyone who are standing up for racism are from various backgrounds. It's now progressing into everyone problem as opposed to a Black issue, because I do feel like, especially people who don't believe that they are racist or hold any biases towards race, they tend to kind of think, because I don't experience it, it doesn't exist, it's not my problem, it's fine. But racism is everyone's problem. It's not a problem that's been handed down to Black people. It's everyone's problem, and it's up to us collectively to stand up for that. So that's one of the things that I quite like seeing, is everyone coming together and saying enough is enough, and we need to do more now. Yeah,
I think it's true, especially the fact that we're able to have this conversation with so many people at the virtual table. I think it says a lot that it's not just a Black problem as it may have been perceived years ago. Mukesh, what is your view?
No, I agree with everything that's been said by the other panel members. And coming from an Indian minority background, I've grown up with instances of racism, thankfully very few. But I come from a generation where, you know, my parents' generation would just say, look, ignore it, keep quiet, don't confront these things, just keep your head down and work hard. And I think as Treshawna said, I think 20 years ago I probably wouldn't have challenged certain behaviours, and but now with experience and confidence, you sort of I'll call things out if I think it's not right, and I think it's right to do that. And I think sometimes people's experiences. I mean, there'll be lots of people out there who don't have any racist views, but it's difficult for them to accept that there are others out there who do, because we're all born of our own experiences, and if you've not suffered any sort of form of discrimination, it's hard to put yourself in the sort of shoes of others. So I think it's important that we have this sort of dialogue and an open conversation, really.
Yeah, no, thank you. Lisa?
For me, I probably, similar age to Mukesh, so I think being in my position, I've always felt like the only one. When I went to school, I was the only black pupil at my junior school. There were 3 black pupils at my secondary school. So I've always felt like the only one. And I think maybe because of that, I have been more inclined just to get on with it, just to, when comments are made, just, carry on. I've heard this before, on we go. And I think this summer has helped me personally begin to articulate my experiences more. Talk about them and probably think about them more. Was comments, where are you from? No, where are you really from? If I had £1 for every time someone's asked me that during my life, I wouldn't go to work anymore. My children, my husband is white, my children are mixed race. Are you their nanny? No, I'm the mum. When I gave birth, I was on the maternity ward, and a cleaner walked past, and I'm there. For those people that have given birth, I'm a husk. And the cleaner looked at me, looked at Fergus, my son, and said, "There's not much of you in him." Really? And I've just given, this is the 24 hours after giving birth. I didn't say anything. I didn't say a word. I didn't say anything to anyone for months, for many, many reasons. But these are comments which people openly think they can make about your colour. But it's not racist, and it's not a problem. I can, but equally, they're not comments which for many years I've acted upon. I've accepted. And I think, picking up on Tamina's point about perhaps some of the more negative responses to the Black Lives Matter movement, you almost felt at points that you needed to put the word "to" at the end of it, because White Lives Mattering wasn't part of the debate. That was never in question, and it did feel at times as though you needed to take a step back and say, we know what we're trying to say is that Black Lives Matter as well, in equal parts. So I think for me, Black Lives Matter and this summer has really opened up a whole conversation, personally, professionally, and which I hope very much, it can only be a positive platform moving forward.
No, I agree 100%, and I think everyone's perspective on the topic is really interesting, and this conversation is only going to get easier over time. And I think now we're having conversations that we wouldn't have been able to have when I entered the profession 4 years ago. I wouldn't have felt confident to speak out, whereas now I definitely feel more confident, and it's refreshing to see that everybody is basically feeling the same way. Let's move on to the next question. This is going to be around the topic of allies. It's one of the growing ideas behind creating an inclusive environment in the workplace is the concept of allies, is the concept of looking out for each other and supporting. How would you personally define what an ally is? And what does it mean to you to know that there are active allies within an organisation? So I'll follow the same order as before. Philippa, what are your thoughts?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jazmin, in this. You need people that will support, to listen, to be prepared. I think, Mukesh, you used the word "call it out," to actually call it out when it needs to be called out and not sit quietly, because this is still going on. Lisa, what you were just talking about is horrendous, particularly when you've just given birth. And I can understand for lots of reasons why you wouldn't have dared to say anything or wanted to say anything at the time. But we can't let these things continue. We've got to help and support people to do call it out and say, that's not right. And I think the other point is really around educating and making people open-minded, because, you know, in the white female category, I haven't really experienced it. I've experienced discrimination from a female perspective, but just listening and hearing what people have to say about what's happened to them, you develop a much deeper understanding, and it allows you to become an ally then and actually do something about it.
No, I agree, because all you can do now is just it's actively supporting. It's not just standing by and idly supporting. You have to be proactive and show that you are keen. It's just, you can't stand by and watch, essentially. Tamina, what are your thoughts on how you define an ally and how important it is to have them in organisations?
I think for me, an ally is somebody who may not necessarily have the same background of you or the same shared experiences, but who share the common aim of ensuring equality for all. And I think an ally is perhaps more effective if they aren't from that group, because what that shows is that, notwithstanding not having those same experiences, they accept and acknowledge that this particular group needs my support. And I think being an ally includes recognizing the privilege that you have, as for example, as a white woman, and that doesn't mean, and I think some people sometimes get a little bit confused with the word privilege, because they think it means you know, you're wealthy, or, you know, you have access to certain things. But just recognizing that just being a white person and supporting, for example, a Black colleague who is suffering discrimination at work, that support, it almost adds validity to what that Black person's saying, because often their voices aren't really heard, and often what they say isn't really accepted. So I think being an ally is very much about not just being not racist, but being proactively anti-racist and helping to amplify the voices of people who are suffering discrimination. And I think in terms of I think what the second part of the question was, what does it mean to have people in your organisation? It means the world, to be honest, because, as I said before, often people from minority backgrounds, whether it's Black, Asian, you know, no matter what, you are often the only one in that organisation. So to have somebody there supporting you, amplifying your voice, adding validity to what you're saying, you know, it's extremely important.
No, I agree. I like Lisa saying, and I know Treshawna has said similar things to me, I've always, for most of my professional work, I have always been the only Black person. And so to have a supporting ally, also to have somebody that's may not be in the same boat as you, but understands what you may be going through and is active in that position, I totally agree how important it is. So Treshawna, do you have anything else further to add about that?
Yes, to me, my idea of an ally is, the word that pops in my head is empathy. Someone who can take themselves outside of their own experiences and look at the bigger picture and be able to put themselves in someone else's shoes. Because like I said before, there's a lot of people out there who've never experienced racism, or who don't consider themselves racist, but the fact is that it does exist. And for me, I, like Tamina says, oftentimes the experiences I've had being in various roles, in various groups at university, in schools, oftentimes I'm one of the only Black there. So there is that sense of isolation that comes with that sense of, I feel like I've got to work twice as hard for the same level of recognition, or I've got to act less Black to fit in. It would be good if people would be able to just empathize and challenge their own unconscious bias that they may have, because I know that a lot of us do have those. and just use their voice, because like Jazmin says, oftentimes when Black people do talk about the experiences that they have, I've had plenty of people, with all the stuff that's happened in America, I've read plenty of comments with people saying, oh, here we go again. Oh, they're never happy. Why are you always complaining? We're not racist. And we don't want to hear things like that. We don't want to further feel like our experiences are not to be taken seriously, because it is just what it is. So someone who's, yes, as someone who can empathize and use their voice to stand up to and challenge any prejudice, not just in the workplace, but outside of the workplace as well, with educating their children, because it starts there. You don't want them to go to school with any unconscious bias and treating other kids differently. It starts with challenging your families and your friends when they make prejudiced comments. It's about educating yourself as well, educating yourself on our history, some of the challenges that we go through on a daily basis, and just trying to be an active part of that progression.
The point you made about being an active ally outside of the workplace in terms of family and education is also such an important topic, because I have, heard from friends, or even from my own experience. Sometimes, I live in a city, and I've been afforded the opportunity to come across all different types of cultures and experience a wealth of different experiences. And sometimes if you have family members who are from a small community, or they're not very open to other experiences, sometimes being an ally in your and speaking out on these topics in your own family can be the most important starting point to encourage a change of thoughts and opinions and the unconscious bias. So yeah, I resonate with that point a lot. Mukesh, what's your view?
Yeah, I think in terms of being an ally, I think it's somebody who can be a good listener and a sounding board for people. I think the legal profession can be quite hierarchical. I don't think we are within Freeths, but I think it's incumbent upon, I think, senior people within the firm to put themselves forward as allies as well, because I think the experience that we all have does have a lot to contribute in terms of guidance to more junior members within the organisation. And I think certainly, I still keep in touch with my old training principal because a lot of what I do as a lawyer now is grounded in what I learned all those years ago. So I think there's a role for everyone really within the sphere of being an ally, and I think it's not a one-way street, it's two-way. We've got to listen as much as providing our own views and guidance.
No, I agree, and I think this is where the mentoring scheme that Freeths have set up is also quite important, because like you get the junior matched up with the senior person, and that will create a friendship and a professional relationship, and also possibly an ally as well. And I definitely I can see the importance of something like that. Lisa, what are your thoughts?
I think the only point I would make, I think you could, there's some brilliant points been made there, which I don't need to repeat, but I think it's essential in the firm that we have allies. But I think just throwing it open wider, that I know what we're talking about today, but that there's not where prejudice and discrimination ends. There's sexist behaviour, there's homophobic behaviour. So everything that we say within this group, within this platform and this panel, has got to apply to those, in those areas as well. And I think it's probably a proactive support across the board, and all of the points which Treshawna just made are as applicable to gay colleagues, to women. It's a shift in mindset, and I think the beginning more to call out inappropriate behaviours. There was training in the firm last year when we were back in the office on unconscious bias and calling behaviours out, and I think that at my office that did lead to a change in some behaviours, and that was as a result of that training. And I think it's really, really important that that only gathers a momentum, and it's got to carry on. It's got to carry on.
No, I think that a similar thing happens when we had the training in London. It definitely, although it maybe made people uncomfortable, it opened up the topic and it encouraged more people to speak about it. And it wasn't race isn't a taboo subject. You're not going to offend anybody by having these conversations, but I can understand how it may be uncomfortable because we're all some things always make us feel uncomfortable, and it's just breaking through that, realizing that you're not going to offend anybody, and if it comes from a place of learning and a place of support, it's going to be received well. I'll move on to the next question, and just to remind people listening and the attendees that you can also submit any questions that you want us to talk about during the panel on the question and answer feature. So the next question is, okay, so this panel is, we set it up because of Black History Month, and the month is now coming to an end, but it's clearly very important. We have to maintain the momentum of supporting the Black community. And this isn't just a 1 month conversation. What do you think people can do to be allies to the Black community outside of the Black History Month setup? What can we do all year round to support the Black community? Philippa?
Well, I think it's about deepening the understanding and listening to the community, and listening to people within our own offices, but also in our personal lives as well. Because it's that, once you get to a better understanding of what the issues are and what the bad behaviour is, then you can start to do things to try and put that right. And I think also opening your mind in terms of what you tend to read or what you watch. I mean, I watched Just Mercy a couple of weeks ago, which is about highlighting the terrible treatment of people on death row. A lot of them were Black people who were wrongly accused of crimes. And I think one of the comments from one of the police officers, well, it was bound to be a Black person, so we've got one of you, so who cares? And you think that was like only 10 years or so ago. So it's realising and, watching movies, reading publications, talking to people, and then actually saying, this is wrong, we've got to change it. And then you can start to do things in your own life, calling it out, in a work context, the way that you approach things, this unconscious bias that everybody has. We've got to make sure that disappears. And I know training and all those sorts of things help, but the bedrock has got to be ourselves being open-minded and really learning about what's going on and recognising it and listening to it. So for me, all of those things really, and I think that what's important is the journey has really started for a lot of people now, and it's taken the terrible atrocities for that to have happened.
Yeah.
But it's at least there's some good things that hopefully we've got to make sure that momentum continues. As you said, it's a safe environment. We need to just learn together and recognise it and do something about it.
No, I agree 100%. Thank you. Tamina?
I'd say there are probably 5 key ways in which you can be an ally outside of Black History Month. And I think the first thing, privilege, and recognise that, your ethnicity will never be something that holds you back from perhaps getting a job or having certain opportunities or progressing in your career, etc. And I gave an example before of, I think what some people probably don't recognise is that often a non-BAME voice, there's almost a presumption of honesty and integrity, which you don't always have with a BAME or Black voice. So just recognising your privilege and using that privilege to help somebody in a particular situation and when you see an injustice happening before your eyes. Secondly, educate yourself. Bear in mind, it's not Black people's job to educate you, and you have to sometimes also recognise that it's quite traumatizing and quite tiring, constantly trying to prove and justify, the challenges that we go through. So, it's as simple as, and Philippa mentioned something that you can do, but, reading a book, going on Google. I mean, if you go on Google and you type in how to be an ally, there are a list of things that you can do to help be an ally. So I think definitely educate yourself in terms of how you can be an ally, and educate yourself about Black history and Black experiences. Black history isn't just slavery. Black history isn't just trauma. You know, we are multifaceted people. You know, we have the same experiences as every other race and culture do. You know, we're parents, we're professionals, you know, we fall in love. You know, it's not, we know, we're not just one specific group of people who only go through trauma, you know. So it's really important that you educate yourself about Black people and their real life experiences, not necessarily what you see on the media, because the media, quite frankly, isn't a true representation of Black people. You tend to find that there are stereotypes which, quite frankly, aren't true of the vast majority of the Black population. Thirdly, listen to and amplify Black voices. Okay, it's just important to listen, and listen with the intention of listening, not just hearing what they're saying. Digest what people say and take it on board and see how you can assist that person in their endeavour. Fourthly, be prepared to have those difficult conversations. You know, I think as English people, we sort of cringe at the thought of talking about race and racism. It's just in our nature, you know, we sort of shy away from those difficult conversations. But I think in order to be an ally, you have to be open to have those conversations. And I think lastly, support organisations whose aims are there to advance, you know, the aim of being a diverse and inclusive society. And specifically from a legal perspective, obviously there's Birmingham Black lawyers, and we are, you know, tailored towards Black lawyers in Birmingham, but there are tons of organisations whose aim is about promoting diversity within the profession and making it inclusive from all aspects. So, you know, just find out who those organisations are, you know, and see how you can help. And helping can be as simple as sitting on a panel. You know, we have panel discussions all the time, and students want to know, what's it like to be a commercial, or what's it like to do insolvency? You know, what steps can I take to do this or that? Just having, you know, volunteering your time and sitting on a panel, or, you know, attending networking events to engage with students who are aspiring lawyers. You know, it's really simple to find these organisations and to engage with them and offer your time. So those are the sort of 5 tips that I would give in terms of how you can be, you know, a proactive ally.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I agree with
Don't ask me. Please don't ask me anything else. She's too good. She's too good.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I think all of those points are so important. And yeah, I'm gonna ask Treshawna if she has anything to add. But don't feel obliged, just in case, like I wouldn't know what to say after that. So
to further emphasize one point that Tamina made, and it was the volunteering your time. Because for me, growing up and being when I'm, you know, trying to figure out what path I want to take, is the lack of representation that I had that affected my confidence. Not seeing Black people in senior positions in top organizations, not seeing Black partners, Black solicitors, not seeing Black doctors. So that not seeing those things made that dream something as if, well, what's the point in dreaming that? Because I would never be able to achieve something like that. And I think a lot of Black kids do feel like that. So I wanted to emphasize on our point of volunteering your time and creating more opportunities for Black people to be able to progress to those positions as well. And maybe just looking at your systems and policies, and assessing whether they're truly inclusive and whether they truly offer the opportunities for minority groups to reach their full potentials.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's also very valid points. Mukesh, do you have anything else to add?
not much more, because I think Tamina covered it so comprehensively. But I think I certainly agree that, you know, we should share stories, particularly if you are from a minority background, because I imagine that, you know, your own experiences will resonate with others, and that often gives people comfort that, you know, they're not alone, and that there is somebody else who can, you know, empathize with them. You know, I've told people in the past, I remember when I was 16 and speaking to my careers advisor at school, and he just laughed when I said I wanted to pursue a career in the law. And it's that sort of thing, because sometimes I think, you know, particularly the younger generation, they don't see the path to law in terms of how you get there. So I think there's certainly more work that we can do there. And I think just generally, I think we've got to continue the dialogue, because I think, you know, we shouldn't just focus on Black History Month, because I think, you know, then it just becomes a sort of annual thing that we only really focus in on for a very short period of time. This dialogue needs to be sort of carrying on throughout the course of the year. And as Tamina said, you know, it's incumbent on all of us really to better understand the impact of Black history in all of its forms, in terms of its heritage and impact in terms of culture. So we should be doing that ourselves, and there's a wealth of material out there.
No, thank you. So I'm going to now ask some questions that may require you to touch on any personal experiences. Many firms are now focusing on removing candidate names from applications. So it's more of an invisible application, in the sense there's no names, there's no location or ethnicity. It's just like what you're bringing to the table, what experience you have, and just about that person. Have you ever experienced bias in your career that you believe may have been due to your name, race, or gender? So I'll ask Philippa first, and then we can go around the table that way.
I think the only experience I've had, Jazmin, is fortunately not myself, but through friends. So, for example, I had a colleague who was a partner in a firm, who was a woman who left to have a baby. And when she came back, she had to be a senior associate rather than a partner. And I just thought that, why? I mean, if she was going to work part-time, that doesn't really stop her from having the role in terms of title. If you want to change her pay, then you can do that behind the scenes, but why change the title? And I had another friend in another firm who came back part-time, and she had to do compliance. She wasn't able to be a lawyer any longer, yet she desperately wanted to be a lawyer. But yeah, challenging that, there wasn't really, that wasn't fair, because she could have job shared with somebody. So those are sorts of things that I've had, and that you've got, fortunately, you know, we've ridden really hard to stop those things from happening any longer. And I think in the majority of law firms that doesn't happen now. And to me, that's what we need to do with race and, you know, other discrimination that is around us. We have to fight it and stop it from happening, because it's just challenge it, and it's not right. So why should the best person for the job and should be able to do that job? And it doesn't matter who they are, it's the best person. But equally, we're not going to get those best people coming through unless they have the career opportunities, unless they feel they've got role models and they have the opportunity to do that and are encouraged. So, yeah.
Thank you. Tamina, have you ever experienced any type of bias that you believe is due to your name, race, or gender?
Yeah, I mean, I can say I've been quite lucky in that I haven't had that many negative experiences. So I have been, there've been some, but none enough to impact on, you know, me still pursuing my career aspirations. But I have a lot of friends and colleagues black friends and colleagues who have been through far worse experiences than me. But in terms of my own personal experience, the one that sort of stays in my mind and probably impacted me the most was when I before I was a prosecutor, I was a defence lawyer, and I went to the magistrates' court, as I did all the time, dressed obviously to perfection, but I was dressed smartly, and I looked like a lawyer, you know, I looked the part. And with the magistrates' court, there's a secure dock, and you can only get through into that secure dock with a pass. The cleaner doesn't get a pass, like, you know, like either you only get a pass if you're an advocate or you're an usher, essentially. So I came into the dock and I sat down where the advocates sit, and the legal advisor said to me, excuse me, that spot's only reserved for lawyers. And I said, I am a lawyer, I'm a solicitor, I'm here to represent such and such. And she just said, oh, okay, and then sort of turned away. No apology, by the way. And the thing is, she'd seen me before, because before I was even a qualified lawyer, I'd been in court as a paralegal and then a trainee. So, you know, everybody knew who I was. And, you know, I know for a fact that had I not been a Black woman, she would never have asked, you know, me, or never have made that point to me, because what on earth did she think that I was doing there? Did she think that I was somehow going to pretend to be a lawyer, you know? And for me, the message that I got was that she looked at me and she came to the conclusion that I didn't belong there. There's absolutely nowhere in her mind that a Black woman could have been a solicitor in her view. So, you know, and you know, of course, I can't say definitively that was her view, but I'm pretty confident, you know, that that's the reason why she made that comment to me. But luckily, you know, those experiences were few and far between for myself.
That is shocking. And you hear many stories, especially from barristers, about people in court asking, you know, whether they're the defendant. It's a really common story. Treshawna, do you have any experience?
I wanted to chuckle when this question came up. With a name like Treshawna, obviously I've had questions about, oh, is that an African name? I'm from Jamaica, my name doesn't have a meaning, it's made up. It's the pronunciation that's been a problem for me. But as far as job interviews go, too, I definitely believe that the Blackness of my name could have potentially been an issue for me. I mean, I've read somewhere that Black and minority people, we have to send over 80% more applications to get the similar response to someone who's of British white origin. And if you there's still evidence that have a Black sounding name, that employers are kind of just throwing it aside and won't look any further. So I definitely believe that with a name like mine, of course it's come up, it's probably been come up.
No, I was listening to a podcast the other day about this exact same experience, and whether this person should change their name or use a middle name or a pseudonym whilst applying for jobs, and then, you know, clarify what their name is if they then later got the job. And we are getting people from the attendees list commenting on the comments as well, saying that they've also experienced events where people have even suggested that they have more English sounding names to get ahead. So it's clearly an experience that is not that it's quite common to see. Mukesh, do you have any experience?
Thankfully, not many. I think on an occasion I've been in a conversation with somebody on the other side, and for various reasons they perhaps haven't got my name at the beginning, and towards the end when I give my name, you can almost sense a pause, because, oh, we didn't realize you were somebody from an ethnic minority background, because you don't sound like you're a Mukesh, and that sort of thing is unconscious. I don't dwell on it, but it's those little things that I think sometimes make you just take a step back and think about things. Yeah. And I just saw that there's a question from Harjit where she's saying, you know, somebody ignored her because, you know, her name was too hard to pronounce. And, you know, it's little things sometimes that I think kind of, it's a war of attrition almost, isn't it? It sort of wears you down when you have these things, but, you know, you've just got to kind of keep persevering.
Yeah. And there's also the beauty of names as well, and it's the fact that Tamina was talking about the trauma that it has on people and stuff like that. This is whether it's whatever ethnicity you are, whatever name you have been given, it means something to you, and it's it's mentally hard if you ever feel like your name isn't quite good enough for whatever profession you want to enter into or whatever job you're applying to. And it's about turning it on its head. At that Linklaters panel, the speaker was talking about how he changed his name when he was 19 to he looked into his heritage. He had a very British sounding name, and he looked into his heritage, and he's a Black Brit, and he found out that he was of Ghanaian descent. So when he was 19, he decided to actually change his name from the British name that he has to a Ghanaian name. And it was quite interesting from his perspective on it, to him reclaiming his name, but also the consequences of having a very, to other people, a very ethnic name compared to his previous name. Lisa, I haven't forgotten about you. Do you have any experiences that you want to talk about before I go off on a rant about something else?
I don't think my name has ever really sort of posed anything like that, because save for the fact that since I've been married and become Lisa Gilligan, lots of people just decide to call me Gillian. No, it's not. It's Lisa Gilligan. It's not Gillian. But that would be. But interesting, just that I smiled when I heard Tamina's story at the Magistrates Court, because something, the identical thing happened to me. But I was a magistrate, and I just was going with my pass down the corridor to the retiring room, and this woman practically threw herself to the ground in front of me. Where were you going? And then when I said where I was going and showed my pass, my judiciary pass to be able to go, she then said, there was a moment of, but there was no apology other than, well, you look very young. And then that was it. and again, and maybe like Mukesh said, you just go with it and say, okay. And what am I going to say? I'm not going to start we're not going to have some sort of confrontation there and then. Oh, I'm not going to do it. So you just smile, shrug, and use your pass and walk on.
Yeah, it's true though, because at the time you're thinking to yourself, what do you say to somebody like that? And will this person learn moving forward that that's not okay, and you have your own unconscious bias that you need to deal with? But then at that point, you then just need to brush it off and move on with your day. It's a really tough, it's a tough position to be in. I'm conscious of the time and the fact that we need to wrap this up at 2:00, well, before 2. So I think this is going to be the closing question, and we're going to try and get through it quite quickly. And it's more of a conclusion, just to wrap everything up. What does the statement Black Lives Matter mean to you? Philippa?
I think it means to me that we've got to really fight hard to stop this racism, and that is incumbent on all of us, because everybody matters. But this comment and the reason for Black Lives Matter was because Black people have been suffering, and it needs to stop. And I think, to me, that is the most important thing. We need to take positive action to make sure we do stamp this out, because we need to be able to do that. I mean, we can't move forward as a country without actually making sure that everybody plays a proper part in it.
And Tamina?
Yeah, I think Black Lives Matter basically is exactly what it says on the tin. Black Lives Matter, and the reason why it has to be emphasized is that for many years, for centuries, the impression was, certainly from Black people's perspective, is that our lives didn't matter, or our lives were less than. The movement was very much about knocking down doors and saying, look, Black Lives Matter, and you need to start acting as if it does. And obviously there has been by some people a misunderstanding, that essentially what the movement is suggesting is that only Black Lives Matter. Anybody with half a brain would recognize that concept that only Black Lives Matter is absurd. We recognize that all lives matter, but obviously at the moment, it's Black people who are unfortunately disproportionately suffering from discrimination, police brutality, and other challenges. So yeah, essentially that's what Black Lives Matter means to me.
And Treshawna?
Totally agree with Tamina. From my perspective, it just means that we're tired and things need to change now. That's just as simple as it gets for me.
No, that's fair enough. And Mukesh?
For me, I think it means that we individually all have to challenge ourselves in terms of understanding what it means to the Black community. We need to educate ourselves better and look at the wider societal and systemic problems and see how we individually can make a difference.
No, thank you. And Lisa?
Yeah, only everything you've all said, I totally agree with. I think it's time to articulate it, and it's time to act on it, and accept responsibility for acting on it, because I think, as Treshawna said, you're tired of it. So let's positively move forward together on it, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, wherever it might be. Let's move forward positively.
No, I think that's great. I think it's a great way to round it up as well. It's moving forward together positively and supporting each other and supporting those who are tired, and realize it, and it's no longer our problem, it's everyone's problem. And conversations like this are only making it easier to talk about, and it's only gonna progress and ensure that things do get better for everybody and for Black people specifically. So I would like to give a special thank you to all the panel members for taking time out of your day to participate in this conversation. And also I want to say thank you to everybody who has attended. And the thing is, moving forward, we are hoping to organise more panels like this to discover different topics and talk about a wide variety of issues. So please do keep an eye out for any future discussions, and if you want to be a part of any discussions, please do let us know, or if you want them to be about specific topics. So unless any of the other panel members have anything they want to discuss, I'm happy to wrap the call up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jazmin.
Bye.